Section that comes late in my novel, but I don't think it'll spoil the novel if you haven't read it, and if you're interested, it's for sale at the front desk. And this scene is based on something that actually happened in Todos Santos shortly before I went there to live. A lynching that was fueled by fears of baby snatching and devil worshippers that were both real and imagined fears. But I fictionalized the event. And the character is Isaac, who is 14 years old. He's been kidnapped by a guy named Carlos and taken to Todos Santos, which is a small remote town high in the mountains of Guatemala. And locked in a room while Carlos goes to collect ransom from Isaac's mother. Isaac's eyes popped open. He didn't know how long he dozed. In the harsh electric light in the storeroom, it could be noon or midnight. No daylight seeping through the cracks around the heavy door. He sat up and swung his feet off the bed. The nap had cleared his thinking. He had to get out of there before Carlos came back. He got up and tried the door again, definitely locked. The kind of lock that required a key to open, inside or out. He pounded on the door until his knuckles hurt, hoping someone would hear. Nothing happened. What did he expect? Even if someone did hear, did wonder who was inside, trying to get out, did decide to lend a helping hand, what could they do? Carlos had the key. Isaac stopped banging and started looking around for tools to force the door open. Just cases of drinks on the shelves, a few rough wooden chairs, a small table with stuff piled on it in the corner. He looked through the stuff. Plastic bowls, broken cup, enamel pot. He opened a drawer in the table and found a metal spoon. It was an ordinary stainless teaspoon, a little cheesy, with a handle decorated by some curlicues. A straighter, thinner handle would be better, but he'd give it a try. No matter what he did, he couldn't force the handle of the spoon into the crack of the door. After tearing up the wood a little and bending the handle, he gave up and threw it on the floor. He kicked the door again, bruising his foot. Near the bed was a large wooden box, painted emerald green, with big yellow stars on it and little yellow legs. In other circumstances, he would have admired its funky handmade look. He opened it, hoping for treasure, not doubloons, but a screwdriver and hammer. All he found was a ragged pair of blue jeans and a Grateful Dead t-shirt. That was it for the contents of the room. Storeroom, bedroom, whatever it was, there was nothing in it to pry him to freedom. The only thing left was his backpack, still with him after all this. He rifled through it and pulled out his passport. He fingered the stiffness of its cover with the lamination coating his photo, his name and information, and the bold lettering, United States of America. Not as good as a credit card, but he didn't have one. It would have to do. He slid the passport cover into the crack of the door and felt for the lock. The flimsy cardboard butted up against the bolt and crumpled. Again and again, Isaac jammed the passport against the lock and jiggled the door, but the bolt wouldn't give. Again and again, he refused to give up. He didn't have anything else. He looked with desperation at the damaged passport, the cover starting to shred under his assault. He begged it to work. Minutes were ticking by. Carlos would be back soon. He doubled the cover of the passport back on itself, the thing his mother had told him countless times never to do to a book, and slid the double thickness back inside the crack in the door. Up against the bolt again. This time, he felt a little give. Another jostle of the lock handle, and the door sprang open. He grabbed his backpack, stuffed the ruined passport in it, and stepped outside into morning sun. He glanced around for signs of Carlos. The dun-colored street was lined with shops, doors and windows standing open, people milling around, all locals. Up the street to his right, the people thickened into crowds. That would be the market. He started in that direction, with no clear idea of what he was looking for, only that in the center of town, maybe there would be a policeman or some sort of authority he could go to, and that if he saw Carlos, he would duck into a store. The closer he got to the market, the more people there were. They looked at him out of the corner of their eyes. They made remarks in Mam he couldn't understand. He remembered that something weird was going on in Todos Santos. They were expecting a devil invasion or something. They probably thought he was a devil. He hoped the cops weren't superstitious. The sidewalks ahead were full of vegetable and fruit stands. He had to move out into the street. Here he felt more exposed to the stares of the people and the possibility of running into Carlos. He kept looking for someone in uniform. Never had the police seemed so appealing. He thought of asking someone where the police station was, but was afraid to draw more attention to himself than his blonde hair and white skin already attracted. At a corner where a side street skirted a large concrete building and he could scarcely pass through the crowds around French fry and taco stands, he saw a welcome sight. Tourists, bending over a display of fruit spread out on blankets on the cobblestone street. So the town wasn't closed to outsiders after all. 2 guys, Asian by the look of them, probably Japanese, since that's what Asian tourists generally were in this country, loaded down with cameras. The younger guy lifted his camera to snap the woman selling the fruit, but the woman startled at the sight of the camera as if it were a gun. And her baby stopped nursing and began to cry. The older tourist, a white-haired guy wearing a surgical mask over his mouth, reached out to touch the crying baby. The mother clutched it to her breast and started screaming. Screaming like she was being murdered. Isaac couldn't understand the words, but the people around him sure could. They surged toward the 2 tourists, pulling Isaac with them, all shouting at once. A few words in Spanish separated out of the din. Baby stealers, the baby snatchers are here. People grabbed the old man and started hitting him with their fists. He bent double and threw his arms over his head, possibly having a heart attack. More people rushed toward him, carrying big sticks. Isaac was just a few feet away now. He saw the savage faces of the attackers, crazy with frenzy. His heart slamming against his chest, Isaac pushed forward and grabbed the old man's arm. He yanked him away from the sticks, and the old man practically fell against Isaac. He was small, frail, trembling violently. The other Japanese swung his camera at the attackers in an effort to fend them off. Immediately the crowd turned on him. Isaac saw the sticks flailing, heard the shouts and screams blend into a deafening uproar, and pulled the old man through the press of bodies toward a side street. They broke free of the crowd. The old guy grabbed Isaac's shoulder, and Isaac put his arm around him to hold him up. He half dragged him up an incredibly steep street over paving stones that were round and slippery. He stumbled with the weight of the man clinging to him, almost collapsing. People rushing down the street toward the roaring crowd below went around them. Isaac straightened and kept on heaving the old guy up the hill, his lungs bursting with the effort. They made it to the top, to an intersection of narrow streets, more like cobbled paths. Isaac pulled the old guy around the corner, into the niche formed by a doorway, and stopped, leaning up against the closed door, gasping for breath.